Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Land Your Ground. I'm your host, Chase Burns, and this is episode 4. Today we're in the studio with Jordan Sheese, and we're talking a little bit about what's new with Land Your Ground, what we've been up to here recently. We've got some really cool content coming up, but we're going to dive in a little bit more about what's just happening with land on these farms out here in the Midwest right now, and maybe even talk a little bit about hunting season, farming, cattle, and then potentially talk a little bit about the land market. Thanks for joining us. We're really glad to have you. Our audience is growing daily, and we're very excited about that. But we wanted to invite some feedback. Wanted to ask you guys, now that we've had a couple of episodes out there for you, if you've got any questions maybe that those brought up. Jordan, you think that it'd probably be good if we'd heard from some of our listeners about what they want to hear about next, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we definitely want to hear feedback because, otherwise we're just sitting here spouting stuff off, right? So the more
Which we're pretty good at. But
right. Yeah, we're good at coming up with things to talk about, but not always what everybody wants to hear, right?
We've got some really cool stuff coming down the pipeline, though, so we're definitely excited about that. But more than anything, this content is for you guys, so we want to hear from you. We would love to hear any questions you have. We'd love to hear some feedback from you. If you haven't heard some of the most recent episodes that we've got out there, let's just maybe review a little bit. Sure. We can chat here quick. So Shay Litweiler was one of our guests that we had in, and that episode, if you want to go back and find it, was Genesis of a Farmer. Very cool, really, really fun to listen to his land story and kind of his evolution as he moves out of one career field and becomes part of a family farming operation, and a lot of cool stuff in there. Jordan, what did you think?
For as many years as I have known him, that was actually the first time I've heard the entirety of his story. Yeah. I didn't know all that had transpired and how he really got into it. I just had honestly, I only knew him as the cop for a little bit because I didn't go to the Aledo High School where he was the resource officer.
Sure. Yep.
So I wasn't used to that. So when he switched over to farming, it wasn't as big of a surprise to me as somebody that doesn't know him as well. But hearing that whole story was something else. I mean, that's really digging into those farmer stories.
Well, that brings up a cool point too, because there's so many awesome land stories from people, whether they're farming, livestock folks, or just hobby farmers, or just country living in general, that like people that you've known for a long time that you really don't know, maybe if you weren't around for it or you weren't involved in their life story at that point, you don't know, like, how did they get there? How did they end up out in the country or on a farm, or how did they get started in farming and some of those things? So
yeah, not everybody was born sitting on a John Deere tractor.
Not everybody. We know a few, but
a few. Yep.
Yeah, but no, it was he's got a really unique story, so that was a lot of fun in that episode.
Yeah.
The guest we had on most recently was Kurt Geyer with Working Class Bowhunter. Awesome to have him in studio. A lot of fun listening to him. I had some good highlights from that one, the things that I really enjoyed talking with him about. But did anything jump out at you?
I have not poured myself into deer hunting as much as I did waterfowl.
Mm-hmm.
That was what I really got into when I was in college. And deer hunting is a whole nother beast.
It's a beast.
And it is, like, the preparation and stuff, people putting out food plots. There's so much information to be learned about it, and it's really hard to come by it. And those guys, they're talking about that stuff every day.
Well, that's why his show has become so popular, just because the people who live it and breathe it, you could talk about deer hunting 24/7 all year long and probably not run out of things to talk about. Mm-hmm. There's always something new to learn. There's always a new story to hear, and it's entertaining. For one thing, but when the further you go down that rabbit hole, the deeper it gets.
Yep. It just keeps, you can keep digging and digging and digging.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we really appreciate having him on. Kurt's been we've had a professional relationship for quite a while, kind of become friends. Good people over there on that program, and having him in here, and then he's just kind of been a lot of fun to collaborate with.
Yeah, absolutely. And his audience has been great too. I mean, they've been a lot of fun to interact with, and we saw a little bit of that go out when we were putting out shorts and stuff and reels, just getting to see those folks come in and get a chance to check us out and being able to see who all's with him.
They like cool to engage.
Absolutely.
Which is awesome. So that's really, really cool. So if you're just kind of finding us for the first time here, and you're new to listening to the podcast, whether it's Spotify or on YouTube or whatever, but we'd invite you to come and check out our website. We just got the website launched live here recently, and so some cool features in there. It's going to be kind of a catch-all for some of our content, but you definitely want to check it out because one thing that we're going to do in there is have a place for you to kind of drop us your land story. We would love to hear from some of our listeners, some of our viewers. We'd love to know more about how did you get started, or are you just kind of still in the I'm searching for land. I'm preparing myself for that big day when I'm able to purchase my first farm and some of that kind of stuff. So, man, reach out to us. Use that. We'll have form in there for you to just kind of tell us your story.
That's what we thrive on. I mean, we love hearing that stuff. I mean, that you talked about it with Shay, you talked about it with Kurt, what's dream. You guys talked a little bit about like fantasy properties or whatnot. So it's exactly that. We want to hear those stories because they're fascinating.
Yeah. It's definitely, it's the thing that tethers us all together. Whether it's a hunter or a farmer or cattle person or somebody that has a dream, they're an entrepreneur and they want to develop a piece of property and put up a mini storage unit, or if they want to create a campground or just a motocross track or whatever, something that that unites their passion with a piece of land. And there's so many different stories that it's really, really cool to hear them. And we're going to be featuring a lot of them, but tell us yours in there. We might give you a shout out in a future episode. Or maybe potentially you become one of our next guests. So just, definitely looking forward to that. Would love to see some of the stories that come in from that.
Yeah. And, besides that, we've been pretty busy. There's been a lot going on. I mean, I don't think we've been in the studio together for a little bit now. So actually getting to sit down and get after it's been nice. What have you been up to?
Oh, everything. Fall is typically my busiest season of the year, and it's my favorite season of the year. We talked about this, I think, in our first episode that, I love everything about fall. I love it when the crops dry down and start getting harvested. I love seeing more wildlife out in the fields. I love the color change in the trees and the crispness of the air. And I'm a hoodie and vest guy, and I love a bonfire and everything about it. So it's hard though to squeeze in a little bit of time to just kind of soak it in and enjoy it, because fall is so busy. Mm-hmm. Well, when you live in the country and you have livestock, you have some animals, I'm not a professional rancher, and I'm not really trying to be. It's just, it's another one of those passions of ours, things that we really enjoy. And, but there's a lot of work to be done, as you're getting ready for winter, or you're just, and then rolling into hunting season, on top of, let me back up for a second. We have cattle. So with most cattle operations, you either fall calve or you spring calve. And we've tried both, but we've switched over to fall calving. So you have calving season that starts basically for us about the same time that archery season starts for whitetail deer. So
that's a conflict.
This is why a lot of serious bow hunters will say that you should try to plan having children, maybe not so much right during the middle of the rut or during whitetail, hunting season, because it's a conflict, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if your calves are having babies, it's not quite as epic or important as it is having children, but it can be just as time consuming. Yeah. So there's definitely that factor. But we have been up to a lot. So we went through all of our fall calving, which means then month after you have your calves, well, then it's time to rebreed, because your calving gestation, your cattle are about 10 months. So about a month and a half, 2 months after you calve, it's time to go ahead and make sure that
it's that quick. I guess I never thought about it like that.
So and then basically that way your calves are about a year apart in the same interval,
Okay.
And we're a small outfit, so we don't have a bull, so we do artificial insemination, AIing, and that's a little bit more of a multi-step process, and it's all you have to you put in seeders and then you sink the cattle, and you have to the timing of it to make sure that all your calves are coming at exactly the same time it's a little bit tricky of a process, but it keeps us hopping. It's another thing that fills up the fall calendar.
Yeah, and cattle are something else. I mean, they're fun to work with, aren't they, Chase? Can you?
They're very frustrating to work with at times, but No, Jackie and I worked cows the other day just by ourselves, and sometimes the stars align and it just goes as slick as it could be, you know? So we sorted off the couple that we wanted to get in and move through the chute, and they just kind of naturally separated themselves off and walked right through the great gate we wanted, and somebody closed it up, and there was no jumping around and chasing and, you know, hollering and, you know, slipping in the mud, and it can definitely be a lot of that at times. So it went super slick, and, you know, you're just always, you just say a little prayer of thanks whenever that happens, because you know that's not always going to be the case.
Yeah. And my folks have got so many stories from they used to raise cattle and hogs, they used to work for people raising cattle and hogs.
Yep.
And they have the stories that they have told me about being out there butt crack of dawn, doing everything, whether it's moving hogs into trailers or whatever. Yeah. It's a lot.
Yeah. And then, you know, getting all your hay in, you know, so you're baling hay throughout the summertime, but if you're in the boat that we're in, we don't have enough pasture ground or enough hay ground that we're out there baling it ourselves. So we end up, you know, towards the end of summer, early fall, it's like you got to make sure how many bales you're going to need to get you through the winter until the grass greens up again, and make sure that you got it sourced, and then go get it, haul it in on a trailer and all that sort of thing. So just kind of stockpiling all of your forages. We use some stock bales too. A lot of people around here will round bale their corn stalks, and then you can use that and kind of feed that supplements. You know, helps cattle with bedding, and then helps them also with just maintaining better body condition, more carbs going through the winter stuff. So we've been busy with a lot of that. But then, you know, deer season, obviously, you know, can catch you off guard because it sneaks right up on you, whether you're ready for it or not. And, you know, absolutely love it. I look forward to it like Christmas morning. Mm-hmm. But, man, it never fails. It's like every year it's prime time to get out there, and we're still, you know, neck deep and stuff, and trying to cut holes in our calendar so that we can slide out there and get in a stand and get in the woods.
Because I mean, so my biggest experience with it would have been high school age, and you know, people take the day off from school to go deer hunt.
Yeah.
You know, like that's nothing. That just makes sense. But
hey, Dad, write me a note, would you?
Yeah, because I mean, and we can get into, there's so many different things you can talk about why it's so nice to be in a deer stand. But being out there, sitting in the cold, well, not too cold this year. I was amazed.
Yeah, pretty mild.
Yeah, it was pretty good, which unfortunately meant that there was a lot of green left in our timber. So the guys were, I didn't get to go this year. I'm still kind of on the mending post, trying to wait and see how long I can sit in one of the chairs in our deer stands. But they got out there, and that green keeps it a little bit difficult to see in our timber.
Yeah, you need some more hard frost to really get all the foliage shed off and, you know, open up the woods a little bit more. Gives them a lot more cover, you know, a lot more protection for the deer from when the Orange Army, as they say, during firearm season comes out. But yeah, so harvest is wrapping up. Touch back on that a little bit with the farming aspect. You know, we've got a lot of farmer friends, you and I do. You know, can't say enough good things about how hard they work this time of year, right?
No kidding. I mean, huge shout out. If you see a farmer, give them a hug, tell them thanks, because they deserve it. I mean, they work around the clock. They do not get a break.
No.
You know, they're going from sun up to sundown, a lot of times before and after.
Yeah. Yep. So, you know, we're praying that they all stay safe out there as they get all that wrapped up and get the crops out of the field. But then it doesn't really stop after that, you know, for a while. Once the crops come out, you know, then they're doing, if they do any fall tillage or spreading manure, or they're maybe putting on anhydrous, or just kind of, you know, taking the next steps, doing the amendments, and prep starts already. The minute the crops come out, they're prepping for next spring's planting season. So hopefully all that wraps up safely, and they, you know, everybody has a really good harvest, which it seems like everybody did here in this area. You know, we had a really dry summer, and then caught some lucky rains, and all of a sudden, you know, the crops finally filled out.
I heard nothing but like amazement about how a lot of places ended up
that
doing.
The yields came in way better than they were predicting.
Yeah, because I remember listening in early, I want to say it was early June, maybe late May. I remember listening to the radio and them hearing farmers talk about, I'm not so sure. I don't know what this is going to look like, because it has just been, it was so dry at the time. If we don't get rain soon, it's going to be rough.
Yeah, there was some desperate weeks there. because it was, there's
And
a pretty
you could see it too in a lot of the crop.
Oh, yeah.
It was easy to tell. Like just driving out by my folks' place, a lot of it just did not look what you would expect for that time of year.
Yeah.
Right. That real lush green.
Right.
Yeah.
I swear you could hear the sigh of relief across all of Rock Island and Mercer County. There was a night where this 2-inch rain came through, and it was more than we needed all at once. Don't get me wrong, but we had been so long without a drop of moisture, and everybody was just like, "This might be one of the worst years I've had in decades," And then just all of a sudden one night, the sky opened up and it just cut loose, and it was just like you could see a smile on almost everybody driving a pickup truck's face for a couple days after that.
Yeah, because that's a big relief.
That's their livelihood.
Yep.
That's makes the difference between having a really, really hard financial time for the next 12 months, or just like we dodged a bullet.
Yep. We hit the mark.
Yeah.
We're good. Yeah. And it's been really cool too, because actually after the crop came out this year, it was actually our first time putting in a crop. My folks are now
on the family farm.
Yep. So we put in wheat, and it's going to stay there over the winter. Now this is going to be my explanation of what it's doing, but they're putting in the wheat. It's going to stay in over the winter because as it gets colder, apparently that wheat's going to force its root down in further, because a lot of what we're doing is focusing on rejuvenating our soil health there on the property. And that, I guess, that I don't know all the science behind it, but that is going to be a huge part of it. So that's going to be maybe a few years, I think, of us running it like that, or it's just going to be
Cover crop.
Yep, all that. And just to really rejuvenate the heck out of it before we actually get into the really fun stuff that we want to do. But it was really cool to see.
I can't wait to hear more about that really fun stuff, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
But the getting to see that green come up, it was pushing up green just a couple weeks after the other crop came out.
I'm no expert on cereal grains or the cover crops, but from what I know about winter rye, which is really similar to wheat, anytime the temperature is over about 42 or 43 degrees, it's growing. So on all of these days where it's like, it starts out at 28, 29 degrees in the morning and you think nothing's growing, you get a few hours midday and things warm up a bit and it's growing. Like it's doing its thing. It just kind of grows in slow motion when it's that cold, but it is a cool season crop. It will grow in the fall. It's going to go dormant over the course of the winter, and then in March, when the temperatures warm up a little bit and some of that snow melts off, it's going to just grow up all of a sudden, and you'll be like, whoa, look at that carpet of green out there in the field.
Yeah, and we are very excited to see that next year. I mean, that's because it's our first one that it's been put in by my family, like us doing it in a very, very long time. So it's exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. Before we hit on that, we were talking a little bit about deer season. So I'm a big archery hunter. I love to bow hunt. I like it because it's quieter out there. It's
it's not pew pew you're hearing every gunshot across
boom,
the county.
Boom on every hilltop in the distance. I got away from firearm hunting for quite a few years. And when I became a bow hunter, I found that was became my real passion. I'm like, I just love that deer act like deer when you're out there during the archery season. You get to see all of this natural wildlife behavior that you don't necessarily get to see during a firearm season when there's more people in the woods, and there's just a lot more, deer are just a little bit more skittish.
They are definitely nervous. I would be too.
Well, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. There's patch of blaze orange on every other hilltop looking for you. So, the archery season to me is just an awesome time for me to get out there and just kind of, observe the land, get to really see how wildlife are using the farm and benefiting from some of the work we've done. And my gears are always turning while I'm sitting in a tree stand and thinking about what the next habitat improvement is that we need to do. How do we make our property better? How do we make, what could I do at this particular spot that would benefit the deer and the turkeys more, and then maybe that would even benefit our hunting next spring and that sort of thing. So
there's a lot that we said that already. There's a lot that goes into it, but you can start deep diving and see and it's not even just deer hunting, because I mentioned earlier that this was Oh, we probably haven't turkey hunted on our property for, I'd say like 10 years if I had to guess. And when one of the guys was sitting out in one of our rolling huts, they saw 40 turkeys.
That's
And
awesome.
He didn't see he didn't see any deer that morning, so he had plenty of time to count all 40 of those turkeys. But but it's cool to think about. I mean,
Yeah,
they're out there.
Yeah, even if you're not a turkey hunter, I mean, that's a conservation success story that you're just witnessing firsthand. I mean, there was a time in the state of Illinois where we had completely eradicated all of our wild turkey population. They were gone, and we had to have establishment programs that netted them or captured them in other states and brought them here. And then, over the course of about 15 or 20 years, the population was protected, and then it's a really cool thing to think about the fact that, like, when my dad was young, they didn't have any turkeys. They just weren't here. They didn't have a turkey season. Yeah. And I can remember I was a kid. My dad drew a first season Warren County, Illinois permit the first year that this area or any of the adjacent counties had a turkey season reopened.
No kidding.
Yeah. And he shot a giant tom at like 10 minutes after first shooting light on the first morning. And it was in the paper in Monmouth and stuff, because it was like, hey, the first turkey that's been harvested in Warren County, legally anyway, for a long time, right?
Right.
So it was pretty cool. That sticks in my memory, and I'll never forget it. But it's kind of like it's a reminder that it wasn't that long ago, that we didn't have turkeys, and it took a lot of conservation effort and a lot of
And those efforts they're no joke. I mean, they really that's proof that they work, and the people that have been doing it for so many years. They're making a huge difference.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so, protecting and promoting and releasing turkeys and doing all of that sort of stuff is maybe where the birds came back from. But at the same time, the seeing 40 of them out there on your farm, that's a testament to the fact that you guys have some good habitat, because they don't stick around, if we don't have good habitat. We don't protect them during nesting period and that sort of thing, and make sure that they have everything that they need to have a successful clutch in the spring and then raise a big crop of birds like that. That's exciting. I mean, I haven't turkey hunted much in the last 6 or 7 years, but I still get pretty pumped up when I see a big flock of birds, because it's like, oh, that's awesome.
And speaking of big flocks of birds, I have found my passion in the form of waterfowl. I had a buddy in college that introduced me to it probably late in our freshman year, and I figured out that it was the most miserable thing that I just couldn't live without. Because
miserable thing is right.
Yeah, I've said that every time that I've talked about it. It is one of the most miserable things I've ever done, and I would do it every single day if I could, because I enjoyed that much.
That's called an addiction.
Yeah, well,
it's a healthy addiction. I really believe it is. I mean, if it gets you out there and it's connected to the land and it's connected to wildlife and just get you outdoors, keeps you active. Like, you kind of waterfowl hunting, in my experience, which I have not had a lot of great successes waterfowl hunting, let it be known. You have to embrace the suck a little bit. You have to be willing to.
There's a lot of that.
It can be fairly grueling at times, and but it's worth it. When it all comes together.
My biggest issue, I think, and how I got so hooked, was our very first hunt. I shot my version of the trophy duck, a beautiful wood duck, Drake. They
are probably one of the prettiest animals.
It's the only animal I've ever had mounted. He is beautiful, and he was. It was first thing in the morning. We'd been out there for just a little bit. He was the first thing that came through. I was the first one to draw on him. It was perfect. You couldn't have asked for a better introduction to it.
Did the buddies you were with, did they just let you have him? They're like, we gotta get Jordan hooked.
Well, I think I was the only one with a gun in my hand. To be honest with you,
everybody else sleeping, or what?
I guess it was early. We'd been out there since it was before dark, and because the place we hunted was just. It was miserable. I mean, some years they'd flood it. Some years they would grow like a crop of corn in it or beans, and then they would flood it according to that. If it were corn, they'd flood a little bit taller than they would if it were beans that were in.
Yeah.
But you're walking through that, and sometimes that mud is up to your hip, and you're trying to trudge through that to get out to the spot where you're going to hunt.
Yeah.
That was that's so dang miserable. And then you sit in it all day.
Oh, it's the worst when you're dragging your boots through the mud flat, and you've got a couple 100 yards to go before you can get to the blind or get back to solid ground. your legs start getting a little tired and you start feeling like, man, if one of my boots gets stuck, I'm going to face plant in this mess.
Yep.
My waders are going to be full of water. My gun's going to be covered in mud. Like, it's all you can do to just keep your feet under you sometimes.
I can tell you that I have cleaned my gun out from top to bottom for exactly that reason.
Every waterfowler has, I'm sure.
Yeah, it is. I loved it, and it was just from the first time we did it, it was like, boy, that sucked. What time are we getting up tomorrow? Because it was just.
We're gonna do this again, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, and we've I haven't gotten to do it regrettably for, gosh, it's probably been since college. I think it was the last time I went, and that's whatever 2017 was.
Yeah, so you're getting pretty jazzed up about getting back at it.
Yeah, so I've been sitting out and watching. I've been going out to some of the ponds, some of the bodies of water that are around our property, and then sitting and watching geese as they fly over, which I haven't seen. I've paid attention to them over the last few years, watching for snow geese and for Canadas as they're flying over. And we're in a good spot. I mean, we're a little ways off the river where our farm is, but we still get a lot of traffic. Hunting. Yeah, and that's all I'd really be able to do. I mean, I could hunt our pond.
Well, you got a pond, and then now you have winter wheat. I mean, you could be in good shape come snow goose season.
Yeah, and I am. Oh boy, the more we talk about it, the more I'm like, maybe I will make it happen this year, even though I'm nowhere near prepared for it.
You're never prepared. You just got to start before you're ready.
Yep,
get after it.
I'm really looking forward to it, and that's I love deer hunting, and I've always ever since I've been early high school age. We've been out there every year, but finally finding that one thing that was really for me in waterfowl hunting really was big.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And speaking of getting some good harvests, and what did you guys take this year?
We've had a really good season so far. I mean, we're about the halfway mark at this point. So I got lucky. I'll admit. I'd say blessed maybe. Early to mid October, I think it was my second sit of the season. Hadn't been out much yet. Wind was right to hunt a spot that I hadn't hunted in a long time. We have a few really nice mature deer on trail camera showing up pretty regularly this year. And so a couple of them, I have high hopes that I was going to encounter one of two deer at a particular location. Got in there, and this deer showed up that I'm calling him the ghost buck because we had him on camera the previous year, before season and after, or at the very end of the season. I had not gotten one single image of him yet this year, and then boom, there he was. He just showed up.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was, second or third week of October, was able to harvest him with my bow, and that was just awesome. Really nice, really nice mature deer with a lot of cool character. And, of course he ran back into like the thickest, gnarliest patch of our timber after the shot. So,
because of course they have to.
Yeah. But I mean, it was a good hit. He didn't go that far, but, so Griffin came out and met me out there and brought the Ranger, and we, found him, got him drug out of there. It took us about 2 hours, the two of us, to get him not very far, to be honest with you, but over a bunch of log jams and down through a creek bed and stuff to get to where we could put him in the Ranger. So
yeah, pulling him out of a creek it's really nice when they decide to end up in the bottom of the creek. We waterlogged.
We were both of us dripping with sweat. Like, I've never seen that kid grunt and pull so hard in his life, and it was like both of us worked hard to get that deer out of there. But like, we were smiling most of the time, but it was tough work.
Yeah. That's what makes it worth it, right?
Yeah.
Even though it sucks right now, it was worth it.
It's a good memory.
It's a good memory.
It's a really good memory.
Yep.
So, so that was a lot of fun. And then we just got past our first firearm season. My focus during the firearm season, I like it. I have regained a love for it, but mostly just because getting my boys out there and getting to see them, with the gun and see some excitement when deer show up and stuff. So had a couple of good sits with Riley, who's our older son, and he didn't pull the trigger on one yet. And then Griffin and I had a fun sit one evening, but then the next afternoon he decided he was going to go hunt with my dad and sit on another family farm. And so, he shot a really nice buck that had a lot of cool character, and an older deer, but he had broken off one of his main beams, giant brow tines, and just snapped the beam off. Cool looking deer. And it's neat to me. That's, I'm like, oh, I wish I'd been there to see it, but it's almost just as good or better because he got to harvest that deer on a farm where I harvested my first deer with my dad. So like he was, got to share that experience with grandpa in the blind, which is really
You can't
cool.
beat it.
No. Yeah. That's just an awesome memory. So that's pretty exciting. So we got some deer, hanging in the freezer or in the walk-in cooler right now, actually, that we're getting ready to cut up here this weekend. We do all of that stuff, here in-house. So I don't make snack sticks and summer sausage or smoked stuff. I haven't gotten into that yet, but as far as like grinding stuff or cutting out steaks and chops, roast, all that kind of stuff, we do all that here. So
we're unfortunately the other way around. We do a lot more summer sausage than we do anything else. Like I would say last time I took a deer, we did, I think I mostly did hamburger out of it. And then it was a lot of, we did a lot of summer sausage. I mean, there was five of us at a processing table, putting together all this sausage and mixing all the stuff in and then running it through. Yeah. Holy cow.
Yeah. It takes a village sometimes especially if you have a few deer to cut up. Sometimes it's like in our setup, it'll be the four of us usually. And then, maybe, my dad or my mom might come over and help for a bit. My cousin, he happens to have one here now that's, so he's going to come and help us cut up his and ours and that sort of thing. So when you can get, a meat butchering party kind of going and you get, 4, 6, 7, 8 people or whatever, all hands on deck, everybody kind of has a job. You go through it a lot faster and it's fun.
It's fun.
We really enjoy that part of it. It's fun to hunt together, but then it's also really fun to cut it up, get it all packaged and then, put it in the freezer and then you feel good about, that you're going to make good use of that resource and we get to cook it together, enjoy it together. And it's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, and there's how many times have we talked about it? Like enjoying that, knowing what you are eating came from.
Right.
Just
and you know how fresh it is and you know how it was handled.
Mm-hmm. If there were any mess ups, it's on you.
Yes, very true. You don't get to be mad at anybody else.
I have one time. There was one time where it was the most disappointed I've ever been. Is I accidentally left one of my bags that was going to go to get. Luckily, it was the smallest of the bunch. Like it was the leftovers. Mm-hmm. The leftovers fell out of the tray that they were unthawing in the refrigerator. Just enough behind something that I didn't see it, and then it didn't make it to the processing day, which it still got used. But
okay, good. I thought you were gonna say like it fell behind something in the fridge and
no, and it stayed.
Yeah, 3 weeks later.
No, what? No, luckily not. But it's like oh, there was just a little bit less that went through the processing stage, but
yeah,
it still got used. In some way.
Well, as long as you made use of it, that's all that matters.
Yeah,
cool. So. So as deer season kind of winds down, we still have the second firearm season. There's some late season hunting coming. And late season can be really good around here if you have some standing food on your property. So we'll get some more hunts in, especially once the weather gets cold enough that it pushes the deer, gets them moving during daylight and gets them moving out to our food plots or crop fields and stuff. And that'll be fun. But, basically winter is coming up pretty fast at this point. We're through the hot and heavy part of our deer season. So
yeah, winter sure is fast approaching. It's getting cooler finally. It's been pretty warm like we talked about during the beginning of the deer season, but now that it's finally getting into the cold, what is it looking like in land sales? What changes as the weather changes?
A fair amount changes, a lot about what types of farms are going to hit the market. Once you get past Thanksgiving or so, we get into a lot more of the tillable farmland that sells in this part of the country. So from about Thanksgiving until about the end of March is when probably 80% of the tillable farms hit the market and sell, whether that's through listing or auction or just private deals or whatever. And a lot of that is because, farmers kind of want to see how they're going to come out. Once harvest is wrapping up, they got a pretty good idea. Did I do really well this year? Am I in good shape to spend some money on another piece of ground? Or am I, this was marginal. Maybe I don't have quite as much buffer as I'd like or whatever. And, and if it was a tougher year, sometimes they're kind of waiting to see when that crop comes in. And then they're like, maybe I won't go after that next farm, or maybe I won't spend quite as much. I'll offer less or whatever,
That makes me wonder about when you're dealing in farmland, how much do they rely on like records of previous yields? when it comes to that, but or is that more focused in on seed and like the whatever chemical use they did on the
Well, yeah. So yield history is definitely important. It plays a pretty good role in a farmer deciding what how productive the farm is going to be. Seeing a past track record is going to help them determine maybe how much they should be willing to pay, or how good a shape it's in, how much more, what it's going to need for improvements, that sort of thing. It's also somewhat reflective of fertility. So if you don't have like recent soil tests on it, you might not know exactly what kind of shape that the ground is in, if it needs a lot of money spent on improvements or amendments to get the fertility built back up. But if the yields have been really good, well, the fertility is probably pretty good too. So it's definitely important, and I would say if you're a landowner and you're renting out ground, make sure that you're getting those yield records from your tenant every year. It's pretty important for marketability when or if the day comes that you decide you are going to sell it. So to have some of that history, and just, also it kind of makes, it's a good gauge of whether or not your tenant is doing the things they ought to do to keep the fertility up and that sort of thing.
Sure.
If you're over a 5-year, 8-year, 10-year period watching yields decline or stay the same when equipment technology is getting better and seed genetics are getting better and everything, you probably should be seeing some gradual increases in yields. And if you're not, it's a yellow flag maybe.
Yeah, what's going on?
yeah I mean, you need to dig deeper, get that info though.
Sure.
That's definitely a good one. But that's probably the biggest thing that changes in the land market is just the bulk of hunting farms are going to hit the market between 4th of July and Thanksgiving. And then from Thanksgiving to the end of March, we're going to see a little bit of a shift where there'll be fewer hunting properties hitting the market, recreational type farms, and then more and more agricultural, mixed row crop. Yeah.
That's super interesting that there is a change based on the season. I wouldn't have, I guess that wouldn't have been the first thing on my mind.
Yeah. Well, that's probably the biggest thing is that we'll see a lot more farmland auctions and that sort of thing. Because crops are out of the field, so it's easier for it to change hands when there's not standing crop out there, and we know who the tenant is going to be the next year, whatever. You're going to get it this year, you're going to be farming it next spring, that sort of thing. They also know how they're sitting financially because their crop has come in, and so that's why it makes sense typically to market a lot of those farms that time of year. We still do see a lot of hunting properties that will sell after the season, because there's a lot of times where people say, well, I just really want to hunt it for one more year, get the kids back here from, across state lines or whatever, and just get everybody together one more time and enjoy one more season, and then we'll sell it and that sort of thing. So we do typically January, February, once the hunting season closes, we'll see a few more hunting tracks come up and hit the market. Housing market tends to slow down around the holidays, but other than that, the residential, like in town, everybody always has this impression that, well, I don't want to list my house until April or until May, because we get closer to the end of the school year, grass greens up, flowers look really pretty, and so that's a great time for them to,
make it look real pretty.
Yeah, it shows well, it photos nicely, and everybody wants cabin fever, sets in, and then that you get some warm days and the grass starts greening up. People want to get outside. They're thinking, I want to buy a new house, right? With rural real estate, we're still fairly busy through most of the winter time. People are still really interested in finding a piece on acreage. There's not as much, I don't think, of a lull in the residential properties selling. Now, everybody is busy around the holidays, so it's hard to get people to go look at any house, from Thanksgiving to Christmas time, New Year's, etc. But after that, it's about the same through most of the year.
And it's really cool that the change in the seasons can reflect in the market. I guess I wouldn't have thought of that first thing, but speaking of change of seasons, we've got some content coming out that's going to be kind of focused on the change of seasons, and we'll be bringing you more. There'll be some really cool guests that are going to be coming on, and we're also going to have some more YouTube content coming out. But we've got a lot planned.
Yeah. So we'll be diving in a little bit more on winter prep, what that means for different types of operations, homesteaders, and all that sort of thing. We got some really cool people I'm excited to talk with here soon about homesteading, building your homestead from scratch and all of that kind of cool stuff. And then of course we've got some more agricultural stuff, livestock and farming content coming in soon with a few really neat guests. And then after that, we'll probably be rolling into the late hunting season, and we might have in another couple of hunting guests and talk more about what are the differences when you get into late season versus, pre-rut and rut and during the regular firearm season, that sort of thing. It's totally different tactics, what it takes to chase whitetails and that sort of thing during the late winter. But
now, speaking of late winter, if you're anything like us, when we go out in the late winter, that just means we're cranking up the heater that's inside the hillbilly hut a little bit more than it was in the early season. But yeah,
going through a little more butane and the little buddy heater.
Yep, we don't mess around. We like to stay warm.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It's bitter cold out there when it gets to late January for sure. So that's all really exciting stuff. I'm super pumped about the content we've got out there right now. The audience is giving us some good cues on what they want to hear. But guys, we would love to hear from you. We would love to hear some feedback about any of our past episodes. Drop some comments in there so that we know what you like, what you don't like, what you'd like to hear more about, what guest maybe we'd like to have back on or have in for the first time. So,
and like we mentioned before, getting your land story as well. I mean, we love to hear it. We thrive on it. We want to know how you got into it, how you're planning on getting into it. Any stories from Pat. We'd love to hear that. So
because that's going to let us know how we can help you. So
absolutely.
Check out our website, like we said earlier in there, landyourground.com. When you get in there, there's going to be a spot for you to register or subscribe for our weekly e-blast, and you're going to catch different pieces of content in there than we're going to be able to put here either in audio or on YouTube. So definitely excited to have you as part of that community and join our Facebook group and start to engage with us there and learn more about it. And as follow-ups to some of these episodes, talking with some of these guests, we're going to try to put together a lot of different media for you guys on all of those various platforms. So we would love it if you would like and subscribe to join our tribe.
You can find us at Land Your Ground on all of our socials, and we thank you for joining us.
And we'll see you next time on Land Your Ground.